What if one small island, just 90 miles from America, could threaten a global superpower? Why did a US president suddenly tighten pressure, cancel deals, and bring back Cold War-style tensions? Is it really about security or something much deeper? Today, we uncover the real reason behind the tension, the history and the power struggle that explains why the relationship between Cuba and the United States became explosive again. The 90-mile threat. Cuba is a small country in the Caribbean, but its location makes it extremely powerful. The island sits just 90 miles from Florida, closer to the US than many American states are to each other. For decades, American leaders have seen Cuba not just as a neighbor, but as a potential security threat. The fear dates back to the Cold War, when Cuba became one of America's biggest geopolitical enemies. When the country aligned with the Soviet Union, it brought nuclear danger directly to America's doorstep. This created deep distrust inside US politics, a distrust that still influences decisions today. For many American leaders, Cuba represents unfinished Cold War business. The shadow of communism. The biggest reason behind tensions is ideology. Cuba operates under a communist political system, something many US leaders have historically opposed. American policy for decades focused on isolating Cuba economically and politically to weaken its government. The concern wasn't just about Cuba itself. The fear was influence. US officials worried that Cuba could spread anti-American ideology across Latin America, challenge US dominance in the region, and build alliances with America's rivals. This ideological conflict shaped US-Cuba relations for over half a century. Even after the Cold War ended, the distrust never fully disappeared. The policy reversal in 2014, something historic happened. Barack Obama began restoring relations with Cuba. Travel restrictions were eased. Trade discussions started. Diplomatic ties reopened. Many believed this was the beginning of a new era. But when Donald Trump became president, the approach changed dramatically. His administration reversed many of these policies, tightening sanctions, limiting travel, and increasing economic pressure on Cuba's government. Why? Supporters argued the Cuban government had not improved human rights or political freedom. Critics said the move was about power and influence in the region. Either way, relations became tense again. The Florida factor. There's also a powerful political reason behind the tension. And Florida has a large Cuban-American population, many of whom strongly oppose Cuba's government due to historical experiences and family history. Taking a tough stance on Cuba has often helped American politicians gain support from these voters. So foreign policy toward Cuba is not just global strategy, it's also domestic politics. Winning Florida can help decide who becomes president. And Cuba policy influences Florida voters. Economic and strategic concerns. Cuba also has strategic importance beyond ideology. The island sits in a critical position for shipping routes, military positioning, and regional influence in the Caribbean. American leaders have long worried about rival powers gaining influence there. If countries like Russia or China increase their presence in Cuba, it could shift the balance of power close to US borders. From a strategic perspective, control of influence near America's territory has always been a priority. That concern continues today. The symbol of resistance. There's another, deeper reason. Cuba represents resistance to American pressure. Despite decades of sanctions, economic restrictions, and political isolation, Cuba's system survived. For some leaders, this makes the country a symbol that challenges American global authority. It's not just about territory or policy. It's about power, influence, and control. And symbols in global politics can be just as powerful as weapons. Fear or strategy. So is it really fear? Or is it strategic caution? The answer depends on perspective. Some experts say the strong stance is about national security and regional stability. Others argue it's political strategy and historical rivalry. But one thing is clear. The relationship between the United States and Cuba is shaped by history, ideology, geography, and power, all at the same time. And that makes the conflict far more complicated than it appears. A small island, a powerful nation, and a rivalry shaped by decades of distrust. The story of US-Cuba tensions shows how history never truly disappears. It only changes form. And as global power struggles continue, the question remains, will the future bring cooperation or another chapter of confrontation?